Today, retail sales volume fell. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, the ABS just released the latest retail sales volume data. And in seasonally adjusted terms, sales volumes fell 0.5% in the March quarter of 2021. That follows the 2.4% rise in the December quarter 2020. Now, the ABS says that the quarterly volume fall was driven by household spending patterns gradually returning to those seen before COVID-19. Food retailing was down 2.7%, and that led the falls, while household goods also fell down 1.6%. And the falls were partially offset by a rise in cafes, restaurants and takeaways, up 5.8%, as eating out increased while functions and events continued to return. Across the other industries, clothing, footwear and personal accessories retailing were down 0.7%, while there were rises in other retailing up 0.4% and department stores up 0.2%. Across the states, falls were led by New South Wales down 1.1%, Queensland down 1.2% and Western Australia down 1.8%, with volumes in Queensland and Western Australia in particular impacted by lockdown periods within the quarter. Victoria was 1.3% higher, and that was the only state to rise following restricted trade in the December quarter. Now, having said that, monthly turnover rose 1.3%. And again, that's seasonally adjusted. That follows a preliminary result of 1.4%, which was released previously, and follows a fall of 0.8% in February 2021. And the ABS said that Victoria was up 3.5% and Western Australia up 5.5%, and they led the rises in states and territories following falls in February associated with local lockdowns. Queensland was down 0.5%, and that, of course, was a state that saw a short lockdown at the end of March, partially offset those increases. By industry, cafes, restaurants and takeaway foods were up 4.8%, department stores up 8.5%, and clothing, football and personal accessories retailing were up 5.4%, and they led the rises, driven by growth in Victoria and Western Australia especially. A fall in food retailing down 0.9%, partially offset those rises, with falls in both supermarkets and liquor retailing. Online sales made up 9.4% of total retail sales in March 2021, and online contributed just 7.1% of total retail sales a year ago, so you can see the impact of the coronavirus. Now, this is quite an interesting set insofar that it's clear we are returning to some sort of normality, although normality with a higher online content. But it also suggests to me that the idea that we are going to be continuing in boomland, so far as retailing is concerned, is very far-fetched. And in fact, I had somebody send me these slides today, which highlighted some of the on-the-ground experiences. There are many vacant properties in the retail sector and commercial sector. And whilst this might not be a very scientific study, it does highlight what we're seeing on the ground. In fact, if you walk around the place, there are many vacant shops. And even locally here in regional New South Wales, we've seen a number close recently. So it seems to me that whilst there are some sectors doing okay, there are many others which are really struggling. And as a result of that, I'm not sure that we can really claim that we are in boomland so far as retail is concerned. Now, if you're interested in a bit more detail with regard to the retail turnover statistics, I'm going to go through the ABS series in more detail now. So I'm going to start with total retail turnover, and in the month there was a 1.3% increase, and year-to-date 2.2%. The more relevant quarterly turnover, though, showed that fall, down 0.5%, and still through the year that's a 4.7% rise. And you can see there the total level at current prices, season adjusted with the trend estimates until they stopped them earlier on. And we're sitting there at about 30 billion. By industry, we can see that over the month, food retailing was the one that dived the most, while department stores and clothing and footwear were strong, as were cafes, restaurants and takeaway food services. The total was 1.3%. And across the states, you can see that Western Australia is leading the way at 5.5%, followed by Victoria at 3.5%. The ACT was down 2.9%. South Australia was down 1.1%. And the others were knocking around minor variations. So just quickly across the industry groups, food retailing fell 1.2% for supermarkets and grocery stores, fell 0.6% for liquor retailing, and rose 1.4% for other specialised food retailing. Household goods retailing fell 2.1% for electrical and electronic goods retailing, rose 1.9% for hardware, building and garden supplies retailing, and rose 0.2% for furniture, floor coverings, houseware and textile goods retailing. Clothing, footwear and personal accessories retailing rose 5.6% for clothing retailing and 5% for footwear and other personal accessories retailing. Department stores rose 8.5%, and you can see that after a dip over the last few months, that's a bit of a recovery. And other categories of retailing included a 2.3% for other retailing, which is a sort of a catch-all, 1.5% for pharmaceutical, cosmetics and toiletry goods retailing, 2.7% for newspaper and book retailing, whereas other recreational goods retailing fell 3%. And cafes, restaurants and takeaway foods showed that there was a rise of 5.9% for cafes, restaurants and catering services, while a 3.5% rise was seen for takeaway food services. So in summary, you can see that there is some movement across the different sectors, but it doesn't look to me as though this is a massively strong result. No wonder the Reserve Bank is concerned about creating the wealth effect, and no wonder we're seeing a highly stimulatory budget tomorrow. And before I go, just a quick reminder that tomorrow at 8 p.m. Sydney time, I'll be joined by Robbie Barwick from the Citizens Party, and we're going to discuss some of the broader issues with regard to what we should be investing in to lay the foundations for a successful future. And we may well touch on things like the cash ban, Australia Post, and some of the other issues that are pretty current at the moment. But I want to try and get beyond those and think about some of those strategic issues that I've just mentioned. So mark your diaries, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Sydney time. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.